It's a day that ends in Y in the gaming industry because there are even more layoffs this time coming from Electronic Arts. I know, shocking. I said breaking. EA laid off an unknown number of developers across its Battlefield teams at Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive. This comes during a quote realignment while they continue live service support for Battlefield 6, the same game that sold 7 million copies in 3 days and was the best selling game in 2025 in the US. Wow, EA. Wow. EA lays off, I just have a hat on now. EA lays off staff across all Battlefield studios following record breaking Battlefield 6 launch. Emerald Apple probably has something to do with this. Despite sales, it's struggling to maintain a consistent online player base to generate enough microtransaction revenue to keep the employees. You know what's really curious about this is that 33,770 looks oddly familiar compared to what's happening right now with Marathon. Marathon just launched. Like, at least with Battlefield 6, this had an all-time peak 5 months ago of nearly 750,000 concurrent players. It has dropped to a 24-hour peak similar to Marathon, and then when the screenshot was taken, similar to what Marathon was at that time as well, which does not bode well for Marathon and Bungie and Sony all at the same time, which is why I keep talking about how I think there are layoffs coming there. I think Sony was hoping for a 747 type number, which was hysterical. There's no way that was happening, but I said, that's about the amount of people in Marathon right now. Eesh. Doesn't help that the actual microtransactions are pretty rubbish too. 100% self-inflicted. They didn't fire the dev who celebrated Kirk's assassination. Very true, by the way. Covered that multiple times on the channel. They allowed cheaters to fester, probably because many of the bigger accounts that did it were trans. Yikes. They put in kernel-level anti-cheat that didn't work, so they locked themselves out of potential sales from Linux and older Windows systems without TPM or whatever it's called. Battlefield and EA have lost the plot. And it goes on and on from there, but Pirate Nation says EA laid off an unknown number of individuals from Battlefield Studios, including Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive. Realignment follows Battlefield 6's record-breaking launch amid declining player numbers and live service issues. Again, I keep going back to this does not bode well for Bungie either. From Clownfish, EA is laying off staff across all Battlefield 6 development studios despite the game's record-breaking launch. Mr. Matty Plays. Let's go down the stats. Best-selling game of 2025, estimated 20 million copies sold. Biggest launch in franchise history with 7 million copies sold in 3 days. Beat its direct competitor in Call of Duty, which is something that's practically unheard of nowadays outside of Hogwarts Legacy doing its thing in 2023. And there's layoffs of any kind. Bleak, man. This is, by the way, the double-edged sword of public-facing game studios. If this was a private company, there would not be layoffs. There would not. I can guarantee you there would not. The declining player base is concerning, but the reason why they're cutting them so quick is because they're trying to hit their quarterly revenue. They're trying to appease the shareholders. These companies are not in business to be charities. And EA knows that they don't have an issue making hard decisions. I think a privately held company is just more like a family with people. Like, yeah, we made infinite money last year, so we can continue to pay people, even if there's not necessarily a reason for you to be here. But with that, we can maybe find a place for you to work on something in the future moving forward. EA is just like, nope, bye, gone. That's what's turning into the game industry right now. Wario64, EA's laid off an unknown number of individuals from across its Battlefield teams. Crazy, crazy update. Morpheus quote tweeted me saying, we may not have known how there'd be a shakeup of EA after the Saudis and others bought them, but this is likely a part of that shakeup, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Ubisoft going the direction they are going will likely finish selling the company to the CCP. Yep. Wholeheartedly agree with that as well. And I would think the Saudi deal, which was how many billions upon billions of dollars, which is one of the largest, if not the largest private purchase in the history of gaming. It would go to show that they need to make some serious cuts to make the numbers work. Legendary drops. If you're wondering why, that's it. EA reportedly expects Battlefield 6 to have 100 million players, 3 times more than the series bestseller. What can you even say to that? I think what this speaks to is a greater issue with these game studios. Their expectations are out of whack with reality. They go into it with the mindset of, we're going to throw hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into these games with the expectations that we make hundreds of billions of dollars out of it. It's like, no, that's not how this works. The math doesn't math with that. Sometimes it can if you have a massive hit on your hands. Maybe if you have like a Hogwarts Legacy or a Slay the Spire 2 or something like that. Like, sure, it happens from time to time. Arc Raiders is a more recent example of a live service game. But Fortnite, Roblox, those kind of games, forever printing money. But those are the exceptions to the rule. These studios think that they can convince the higher ups to give the money, inject it into it, and then set the expectations to have a bar that is not possible to reach. 100 million players, that is just begging for failure to set it up like that. Don't do that. Fred says, even a success is a failure for AAA at this point. Reese Kiwi Talks. So this guy I've covered before in the past. He says, game developer interviewer who's interviewed a whole bunch of game devs. He says, I know so many devs that have left the industry completely because of shit like this. You aren't even safe after launching a successful game anymore, which I would argue, again, fries in the bag. Welcome to show business. Companies do not owe you a job. You go there to work on a game. You provide your resources. The game comes out. You have a contract set up. You might get some money outside of that and some bonuses based off of Metacritic scores and stuff like that. And maybe they'll have another project for you in the future. Maybe they won't. But that's how the entertainment industry has always functioned. I get so tired of the people that try to push for consistent wages forever. That's not how entertainment works. You can't promise someone, because then you end up, it turns into a union job where you just sit around doing nothing for 6 months a year if there's nothing going on. That's not sustainable either. So miss me with that approach. It's a very different mentality, and it's always so foreign to me. If you want to work in the game industry, understand that you are in the elite of the elite, the best of the best, and you're making these games for the gamers. You are in the big leagues. There's a shelf life to people in sports as well. You make the game and you move on. If you want a more guaranteed income and you're super talented, be an indie developer and make your own game. And I've seen across the board so many of them do that and prove that you can do that. It's not guaranteed, and it's really hard to do. You got to moonlight doing it because you need a real job during the day to pay your bills. I get all that. It's a challenge. It's a struggle. Life isn't fair. It sucks, but it is what it is. If you have a passion and it's worth it, people will find happiness in it. What these stupid execs don't realize is when you lay people off, a huge knowledge base walks out the door with them. And a lot of the time, the people remaining have to essentially start from scratch because they aren't equipped to deal with the enormity of AAA game development out of lack of experience. Okay, and guess who fails for that? Then the executives start to fail, and naturally the company collapses on itself, which has happened multiple times. The game industry is probably one of the hardest industries to find a job in these days, but I would almost argue it's because they've brought this environment on themselves. They've created games for an audience that doesn't exist for so many years and then gotten mad at the audience that was trying to buy the games. And now we're supposed to just feel bad and give them money? I don't think that's how this works. And maybe this is a sign of a much bigger issue. All-time game collapse is upon us right now. And here's the biggest concern from the game industry's perspective of, as far as I care, I like new games. I get excited about new games. But if new games stopped coming out, I, in a weird way, might almost feel a sense of relief where I could finally start getting to my other games. You could argue the game industry made so many good games for so long and they take so much time to play that it created a problem that worked themselves out of a job. Kind of like training AI to do your job for you. You made so many great games in the past that people could just play those games in the past, which is why the industry tried to go to the you will own nothing and be happy approach, because they saw that happening before even we did. You are witnessing the implosion of the industry in real time. The game industry is going to belong to China, South Korea, and Japan over the next decade. Yep. I go back to what I just said. Whose fault is that? I didn't see any Western studios making Stellar Blade. I didn't see any Western studios making Black Myth Wukong. I didn't see any of these. I see a lot of Sweet Baby Inc. style games coming from over here. And I see a lot of people wholeheartedly rejecting them. I see a lot of issues with all that. So, yeah. And it doesn't end at EA, by the way, because we have even more layoffs on this day that ends in Y. Pirate Nation says, Until Dawn Remake studio Ballistic Moon is officially dissolved. I said, useless studio, pointless remake, 0 tears shed, fries in the bag. And wholeheartedly, across the board, people feel this same sentiment. Studio founded in 2019, dissolved in 2026 after remaking a game that already existed and didn't need remaking. That's like opening a restaurant just to microwave someone else's leftovers and then wondering why no one came back for seconds. Sony really said, hey, take this perfectly fine game, rebuild it from scratch so we could charge full price again and maybe do a movie tie-in. And the studio said, sure. And now they're filing for liquidation, like a speed run of bad decisions. The game is already on PS Plus for free, which is the ultimate punchline. You paid a studio to remake something you were going to give away for free anyways. Rest in pieces, Ballistic Moon. You were a studio equivalent of a homework assignment that nobody asked for. That's actually a great way to put it. The Until Dawn remake was just confusing. When this got announced, people were like, but the version on the PS4 looks great and plays perfectly fine. And I covered this before in the past when it came out, that the changes that they made in the game were actually detrimental to the overall success of the game, where it looked worse in portions. We couldn't even see the character because they darkened it too much or lightened it too much. So yeah, Ballistic Moon is yet another studio that goes under today on top of the unknown amount, but I would imagine massive amount of people being laid off from EA, Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive, among potentially others I'm hearing as well. A lot of people are unemployed today. The decisions being made, the industry got too big for itself. There are a lot of people that play games, but the games that come out are too big. They're too good. And there's too many of them. And people only have a finite amount of time to play the games. And as much as I'd love to play every single game that comes out, just like, I can't. It's not possible. And then you have studios remaking games of games that were perfectly fine in the first place. It's like, that's your purpose? You pass butter? You do the same thing that already existed before? It blows my mind. The EA thing, I guess, understandable from a corporate perspective, answering to the shareholders and making numbers work at the end of the day. But I mean, bro, if you're a developer and you're working at EA, you know that this is what happens with EA Studios. This is not a new thing. This has been happening for decades with EA. They have an entire meme of graveyards of studios they've purchased and closed. That's what EA does. That's how they've always operated. So you can't really feel too bad for it. That's what happens with this company. It is what it is. It's the game industry in a nutshell. And I guess I'll leave it at this. When I used to work at QA at Sony, I've told the story before, but I asked my QA lead, why do we get paid so little to do what we do? Because it's hard work. And he said, because If you want to get paid more money for doing QA, go apply and work at a bank, because nobody wants to do QA at a bank. Everybody wants to work at a game company because it's fun, it's a cool environment, and you get to play video games throughout the day instead of just running numbers all day. So it's a supply and demand thing with the people. And if they change the industry to pay everyone and give everyone a fair shake and give everyone all the money in the world, that just turns into a DEI disaster where people will be in the industry, sitting there, never doing anything, never moving off their ass, claiming money, not changing anything, taking up a spot from someone who could do a better job in the future. But because they become sedentary and never change, I see that being a much bigger issue than we already have. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the game industry moving forward. But the direction it's going ain't great. I'll leave that there. Expedition 33 is technically an indie game, but it's considered a AA game. Yeah, I mean, they had, what, $30+ million put into it. So, like, ... Bungie? Karate Werewolf. They were diverse layoffs.